shoot. Fires from the top of the key and takes it home. The Liberty take a 2-point lead.
Welcome to Liberty FM, the podcast dedicated to all things New York Liberty. I'm Francois, and I'm joined by my co-host and wife, Felicia. This is episode 5, and today we're going to talk about the 2 games that the Liberty played against the Atlanta Dream and then the Phoenix Mercury. And last Tuesday, the New York Liberty faced the Atlanta Dream for the second time this season, and the Dream, believe it or not, created the upset with an 86-79 victory. Felicia, what happened? Because that was a big shocker.
That was a big shocker. They definitely should have won that game, but Atlanta came out. They made the necessary adjustments from the previous game, and they just looked stronger. They looked quicker. They looked sharper on the court. They definitely gave Vandersloot a run for her money. I think they just disrupted the whole flow of the Liberty team, and they just did a better job. And obviously, the biggest disappointment of that night was probably Breanna Stewart, and it was a tough game for her. You know, the shots just weren't going down. But give credit to Atlanta as well. Their defense was good. You know, I think they did a great job on some of the double teams. She definitely had open shots, or open looks, and the shots just weren't falling. So I think, you know, she still tried to do her best and affect the game, rebounding and assists, but the offensive presence was missing. And when your number one is missing offensively, it's going to create a huge problem for the team. So, you know, it just wasn't the game for her. You know, I truly believe if she had even made half of her shots, they would have won this game. It would have been tight, no question, but I think they would have won this game if she even made half of those shots.
Yeah, and that's when you realize that Breanna Stewart, as I said last time, is a cheat code and can help you in so many ways. But when one of the best players in the world is 1 for 14 in terms of field goal percentage, 0 for 5 at the 3-point line with 12 points when she's like the second best scorer or the third best scorer in the league, that's definitely gonna hurt. But let's give credit, though, to Atlanta. Like you said, they made the adjustments. I think it was last week that we played against them in Atlanta, where it was overall an easy win, even though they made a comeback in the third quarter. We won by over 20 points. So obviously, they were going to come back with a different mentality. And let's not forget that their coach is a defensive mind coach. And so we knew that they were going to make adjustments. But boy, that was definitely a different game. Like you said, they put a lot of pressure on the ball. Vandersloot had 4 turnovers, 2 probably pretty much on their own, but 2 where it was like a lot of pressure from the defense. And I would have to say that it was probably, from all the games they played so far, for me, the least enjoyable that I watched from the Liberty. They were very static on offense. So don't you think like the ball movements was very, I don't know, it was very sluggish. So it was kind of like part of the defense is responsible, but part is also that, you know, the Liberty was trying to find some answers. And we didn't mention, but obviously in this game, Sabrina Ionescu was absent from that game with an hamstring injury. So the Liberty didn't want to take any risk. And we saw that without Sabrina, it's a key piece missing, someone that can pretty much score when you need it the most.
Yeah, I think, you know, you definitely felt Sabrina's presence missing on the court. You know, I think she's aggressive. You know, she's a 3-point killer as well as getting into the paint, and she definitely has a great mid-range shot that we were even still talking about a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And so she's definitely the aggressive killer that you are missing on the court at times. And, you know, unfortunately, it was just a tough game for them, you know, and I do give credit to Atlanta, and I do think, you know, the WNBA, it's only so many teams. It's 12 teams.
Yes.
And so even in the 12th spot, to me, it's like every game counts.
There's no easy game,
There's
right?
no easy game, and you got to give credit to these teams. You know, they're putting the best of the best on the court. And even if you're in the 12th spot, you can't just sit and think, oh, this is going to be an easy win for us. They're going to play you as hard as they can. And if you just think because, oh, we're number 2 or number 3 or, we're in the top 5 that we can take on, everyone else below us, that's, you're kidding yourself. So don't sleep on Atlanta.
Yeah.
As you know, through this week, they didn't just beat the Liberty.
Yeah,
So,
and you're totally right. When we see some of the teams that were struggling at the beginning of the season, the Minnesota Lynx, the Indiana Fever, Atlanta Dream, even the Seattle Storm, they're starting winning games.
Yeah.
They're starting to figure things out. And there's enough talent on each one of those teams
Yep.
for teams like the Liberty to not, sleep on their laurels and think that we're going to have an easy win. And like you said, there's a lot of talent in this league. And we have talented rookies this year.
Yeah.
And one player that got my attention was definitely Ailey Jones, that I used to play for Stanford. I was really wondering how her talent was going to translate to the WNBA. Obviously, she was a multifaceted, multi-talented player. But I was wondering the physicality of the WNBA, how she was going to cope with it. But it seems like she's playing like she was playing in Stanford. She had a tremendous second half against the Liberty. She was sort of playing the point guard. For those of you that might question her three-point shot, she had a couple of three-point shots in this game that really killed the Liberty. So that she was definitely a positive. And remember, Felicia, I told you last week, I think, that I was really worried about strong guards that could really create a lot of damage versus the Liberty. And you said, well, I think that, I believe that the Liberty can cope defensively against those guys. Because my objective is I always keep in mind the Las Vegas Aces, who are the WNBA champions. So those are the sort of standards that I'm always looking into. But when we look at the contribution of A.D. Durr, who is a former Liberty player, Alicia Gray, who's having an incredible year, you kind of wonder once again if the Liberty do have problems with very talented guards on defense. And let's not forget also Rookie of the Year last year, Ryan Howard, who also contributed as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough. They got to make the necessary adjustments on the court. I think defensively, the Liberty, they have some holes. I think as the season wears on, hopefully they can patch those up. But, I think they can still take on these teams. But I do think they have to stay locked in for the 40 minutes. They start out strong typically. The first half, or at least they try to, but there's lapses, and in certain teams, especially like the Aces and even Connecticut, they're gonna take advantage, and they're not gonna give that lead back once they get it, if they get it. And so there's still some holes that they gotta put together, but like Brondello said, they didn't really have a lot of practice time together. So that is a big factor. I mean, they're trying to get that in now, but, with players overseas coming back and not having enough time, and, other teams have been gelling for at least a couple years now. So they know how to play with each other. So, they have that advantage. But, I think the Liberty, they have their offense. If the offense is clicking, and if they can play with pace, they are very dangerous. But, each game we got to see. I think they'll grow through the season, and hopefully they can be on pace every game so that they're that lethal. I think we've seen sparks of that throughout each game. They just got to keep it consistent.
Yeah, and so up until the end of the third quarter, the game was pretty tight. But what really killed us was the offensive boards. This is where the Atlanta Dream really made a huge difference, where the Liberty was trying to get some stops, and the amount of rebounds, offensive rebounds, that the Dream got was very frustrating from the stands. And the player that had a tremendous impact in the fourth quarter for the Dream and for the game was Mo Billings. She was plus 14 on the court, the biggest plus-minus of the game. And she had 12 points and 7 rebounds. 7 rebounds. That's a lot. 4 offensive rebounds. And I wouldn't be surprised if most of them were in that fourth quarter. And so when you have a player like that and players that just get the offensive rebounds, it's really frustrating and it's hard for the Liberty when you put a lot of energy on defense, but then you don't box out. And they score countless amount of points like that. And pretty much the Liberty tried to play catch up in the end, and it was kind of too late. The momentum had shifted pretty much.
Yeah, at that point, when everyone's just kind of looking at the ball, not boxing out, Atlanta was just more aggressive. From the stands, you could just see they were more aggressive. They were attacking more. They just got to their spots. And even for the rebound, they made sure to be the most aggressive, under the basket. So, kudos to them. It was an unfortunate loss for the Liberty, but something I think they will learn from and grow from and hopefully work on and get better at patching up some of those holes.
Yeah, but let's not be completely negative. There were some positive things in the game, and you always want to sort of keep some of the positive in mind. And for me, the positive in the game were definitely Johannès and Betnijah Laney. Johannès was very aggressive on offense. She had incredible plays, incredible three-point shots. And that's what I like with Sandy Brandello. I don't know if when I was looking at the post-game conference, it was almost like a second mom. But what I like is that she just let her be. She let her play. And she keeps saying it. Like, with Marine, we want her to be herself. We want her to be aggressive. And with Sabrina absent, she definitely took on board that role and was aggressive offensively all throughout the game. And then Betnijah, I think she was utilized more as a defensive player at the beginning of the season, but now she's finally finding the right balance with the defense and the offense. Offensively, she was also incredible, very aggressive on offense. And so for me, they were the two highlights of the game. Don't you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I think with the absence of Sabrina, they definitely stepped up more offensively. I wish more shots went down for them, hopefully would have won the game. But, they were definitely a huge offensive presence for the Liberty this game. Marine, she's a magician out there. I mean, what can you say about her? I could see why. You just got to let her play. You just got to let the game come to her. But you also got to be ready because she loves to pass the ball, and you got to get your hands ready for some of those passes. And so, I love seeing Marine out there doing her thing. I think, also as the season goes on for her, she'll get more playing time. They love her on the court, and we love her in the stands and all that she can do. So, and with Betnijah, her defensive presence is necessary. It's solid. Her and Thornton, they are the ones that will lock it down. But offensively, I was glad to see her offensive presence more against Atlanta. So, again, they were the highlights of that game. Unfortunately, we didn't get the win, but, next time.
I would conclude about that game that there was one other positive, and it's Jocelyn Willoughby. It's not easy for players like her and also Anshu, to not have a lot of playing time. Jocelyn Willoughby went through a lot of injuries those past few seasons, but she always seems to have the trust of the coaching staff. And I always kind of think about the other team that we support, the Brooklyn Nets, where they always call the stay ready group. And Jocelyn Willoughby is definitely that definition when it comes to the New York Liberty, because she got to have a bit more playing time when, I think it was Marine and Vandersloot that were a little struggling with the guard, especially Ryan Howard. And Jocelyn Willoughby in the second half, she was given the task to defend against her, and she did an amazing job. Now, I think obviously she started finding her foot on offense, but the defensive task is definitely one of her strengths, and I think she did an amazing job. And I hope that she can get a little bit more playing time. I know it's not easy with such a roster, but we're going to need everybody, right, to get to the finish line. We need everybody to be involved. and to contribute. And so for me, I also want to give a shout out to Jocelyn Willoughby because she did really well in that second half in that time that she was given.
Yeah, she definitely came out and was a huge defensive presence, especially against Howard. We needed that. And yeah, I want to see her on the court more for sure. We definitely need that defensive presence, and she's also good offensively. So, I think if she can get more playing time, I know it's difficult as they try to gel the starters together, but hopefully, we can see her on the court more helping out, from the bench.
All right. So now let's move to today's game. We're Sunday. It's the moment that we're recording. The game against the Phoenix Mercury. But before we talk about the game against the Phoenix Mercury, this week the New York Liberty released a new episode from their Liberty Unlocked series, an all-access series about the New York Liberty. And this episode was called Defining a Winning Culture. And I thought it was very interesting. First of all, kudos to the New York Liberty for trying to emulate what we see in the NBA, where we have YouTube episodes and YouTube series about the behind the scenes of teams. I think it brings a lot of excitement to the WNBA and getting to know the players and their everyday life as professional athletes. And so I thought it was a very interesting episode. We saw a lot of communication. We saw them in the locker room, try to define the culture, define their roles, watching films to see what they need to figure out. So it was very interesting to see the conversation, see some of the keywords that they want to, represent the New York Liberty's culture. And there was a quote before the Phoenix Mercury game that kind of sort of illustrate what we saw in that episode, where Brittney Griner said that the Liberty practice hard during these days off because they had 4 days off before the Phoenix Mercury game. And she said that it was crucial that when the season gets going, it's hard to really work on things. And in this 10-game stretch, they find some weaknesses to work on and improve. And sometimes watching film isn't enough. That was a question from Winsider during that pre-game conference. So what did you make of that episode, or what Vandersloot are saying about practicing and especially the the rebounds overall that were necessary to work on?
It was a good episode. I thought it was great. I like the team building exercises they had. For some reason, it reminded me of certain places I used to work. We used to do those kind of exercises. You get into groups and you get to know each other. You get to try, you're trying to build a culture. And so I understand what they're trying to do, which was good. It's a good first step for sure, because this is a brand new team. So they got to get to know one another. They got to build the relationships, build that trust, so that will translate on the court. And that's big. That's important. So you got to start right there, and then it builds from there. So I think it was a great episode. I like what Sloot was saying. They got to work on, with boxing out and getting those rebounds. If everyone's putting in the work, it's going to translate eventually on the court. And, we are seeing signs of that. They just got to keep working. Again, we talked about it previously. They just didn't have a whole lot of time practicing before the season started. So they got to get it in right now, and they got to work with each other. They got to have those honest conversations, even, or tough conversations, if you will. But that's necessary in order to build the trust, build basically a family, for the Liberty. Yeah, so I thought it was great.
And like Brittney Griner would say, at some point it's good to have those conversations, but let's put in the work. And there was one thing that got my attention when they were in the locker room, where she was saying that I see my teammates working hard every single day at practice. And she said that she saw Betnijah Laney hitting countless threes in practice. And so she knew that when I see one of my teammates working so hard and making those baskets at practice, I'm going to pass her the ball. I can trust my teammates that, if I find her on the court, she's gonna make those shots.
And she's making those shots.
And she's making those shots. So I thought it was definitely a great thing to see. And for us to see as fans, a culture that is continuously getting built. And so let's now talk about this game that everybody was excited to see. And so excited that the New York Liberty decided to open the 200 section for this game because the lower level was sold out. So obviously everybody wanted to be there for Brittney Griner's return to New York City. But unfortunately, she sustained an injury earlier this week, I think against the Seattle Storm. A hip injury. No, it was the Dallas Wings. She got a hip injury. So unfortunately, she wasn't there for the game. Well, she was on the bench against the Washington Mystics, but didn't play. And so she was questionable for today's game. And unfortunately, she did warm up, but she wasn't fully ready for this game. And Diana Taurasi was also out for this game. So a lot of people were there. But unfortunately, some of the top players of the Mercury were not going to be able to compete. So we knew that without obviously your top players and also Skylar Diggins-Smith on maternity leave, that the task was going to be slightly easier. But obviously, like we said earlier in the podcast, every team has to be respected. And so we still have to get the job done. And the job was done today. It was, a relatively good game, and the Liberty ended up winning that game 89-71. And Breanna Stewart got out of that funk from the game against the Atlanta Dream, and she scored 28 points, 14 rebounds, and 7 assists to carry us to the win. How did you feel today after seeing that victory?
They started strong. I was definitely proud of this team. They were strong from the start. They did not give up the lead. They definitely took advantage with the fact that Griner and Taurasi were out. Stewie came back with a vengeance from her previous game, which we love. Jonquil Jones had a good game. She had a double-double this game. I think it was her first double-double.
First double-double
of
for
the
the New York
season.
Liberty.
Yeah, so it was good just to see them clicking a bit more. Sabrina's still out, but everyone stepped up. I was happy to see all the bench players too get time on the court and lock it in. They definitely held the lead once they got the lead. Once the starters got the lead, the bench players definitely held it down as best they could. They got a little bit maybe lax in the fourth quarter, but came right back and sealed the deal. They did great. I was really proud of everyone on this team today. I was happy to see Willoughby on the court getting some more minutes. Defensively, she was great. Everyone got their chance. Epiphany Prince, she's back but on a hardship contract. She did her thing as well. And, I really appreciated what everyone did on the team today. They definitely worked as a team today.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the, brightest journalists that we have about the WNBA. She's still very young, but she's very talented. I'm going to give also a shout out to Pepper Pesley. And she was saying earlier this week she got to meet the New York Liberty. And she asked a question to Breanna Stewart. And she was asking her, and you can find it on the Instagram page. She was saying, when you're having a game where your shots are not falling, what adjustment do you make to be able to to be able to affect the offensive end? And so Breanna Stewart responded by saying that I think continuing to do the little things like getting rebounds, 50-50 balls, that's what leads to big things, and realizing that sometimes the ball isn't going to go into the basket, but to remain confident and believe that it's going to get in, and not playing any differently just because your shots are not getting in. So I think she definitely wanted to, make a statement saying that that was a one-off, that game against Atlanta, and she started the game strong. She had 12 points in the first quarter, was very aggressive, was definitely making her shots. And so you look at the stats, she was 1 for 14 on Tuesday against Atlanta, and she was 7 for 10 in the first half alone against the Phoenix Mercury. So when you have Stewie back on track, it's going to be hard to stop the Liberty.
Yeah, definitely. And she also kind of played point at different moments in the game, which took some pressure off of Vandersloot, which was great, giving the Phoenix Mercury different looks. So, she was aggressive. She did her thing today. She got the points she needed, and everyone else contributed around her. What can I say? Stewie's the number one, so she played like it today, that's for sure.
Yeah, she was asked after the game about her 7 assists, and she said that with Sabrina being out, they were practicing with Stewie running as the PG for a little bit, and she was trying to read how the defense was playing her, when the defense was looking at her, and so you could find the slipper or the person in the corner, and she did that tremendously. I was re-watching some of the videos I got from the game, and the number of assists that Stewie got with some of her teammates cutting to the basket, because so much of the focus is on Stewie. So that's gonna free one player that if you smart and just get in time, you're gonna get served a beautiful assist by Stewie, and she had 7 assists tonight. So that was great. And then the other thing that they worked on, you mentioned it briefly, was the rebounding. And Dawson was asked before the game by Winsider on addressing the rebound issue, and she had said that it's working on the details at practice. It's effort too for us. It was just recognizing what we have to do better. I love the girls, especially Nyara Sabale did a good job in practice, and it's something we have to recognize going forward. And they definitely addressed that issue in that game. If you're looking at the stats today, they had 39 rebounds to 27 rebounds for the Phoenix Mercury.
Good job, Liberty.
Now, obviously, the Mercury is one of the worst teams in terms of defensive rebounds, but you still had to get the job done. Yeah. And they did it pretty well, especially in that fourth quarter. We'll go back to that in a second, that infamous fourth quarter. But when they needed the most, they got offensive rebounds and managed to kill the Mercury when they needed to get the job done, pretty much. So other good things about this game was the defense as well. I really enjoyed the defense of the Liberty tonight. Tonight. I'm saying tonight. It was actually early afternoon. But I feel like now that the team is starting to, slowly but surely gel. And I cannot remember the number of times that the Phoenix Mercury ended up with shot clock violations. So that was very, very encouraging to see. Betnijah Laney, that was something that I really enjoyed. It was a battle with Sophie Cunningham. It was quite the battle between them defensively, and it was very, very chippy at some point as well.
It definitely got chippy. Kudos to Betnijah for not allowing Sophie to get under her skin. You can tell she was trying really hard, but she held it together. She held strong, because we don't need no fights on the court for something silly, especially when you're up, you're leading. So it was good. Defensively, they did a great job, and especially, I think I must have counted about 3 or 4 shot clock violations by the Mercury. At the least. There could have been more, but, they did a great job. Kudos to the Liberty for hanging in there defensively against a team that is shorthanded right now, but they're still going to try to do their best on the court. So kudos to them.
And doing their best, they did in the fourth quarter. So we're thinking once again that we're going to cruise and have an enjoyable afternoon.
Oh, no.
And Sandy Brandello was like, and she had every reason to, bring a bench player on the court, because you don't want to overwhelm your starting lineup. So we were up by 22 at that point, and, she put the bench players. But the problem is that none of those players have had the chance to really had the time to work, to play together. They've been, on the court with some of the starting lineup, but not necessarily, all the bench players together. And the 22-point lead that we had was cut to 8 points with 6 minutes and 27 seconds left and the possession for the Mercury. And who gave us a headache and gave us a little scare in that very moment? Who was that player, Felicia? Sophie Cunningham, right?
Yeah.
And I actually wrote it down. She scored 12 points in less than 4 minutes in that quarter. So a little scary moment. She kept on scoring freeze after freeze. Kudos to the Mercury who set some good screens to sort of get her free and score frees. And that kind of reminded me, unfortunately, of that playoff game 2 seasons ago when the Liberty was back in Brooklyn, their first season in Brooklyn, and they had that really tight playoff game against the Mercury, and Sophie Cunningham was the decisive factor in that game, and it was sort of like a flashback of that time. But thankfully, they got the job done, and the player that kind of sort of be like, okay, let's put an end to this and this comeback was Johannès. What did you make of the second half?
She was quiet, the first half.
She had 0 points in the first half. I don't think she took a single shot.
Yeah, she had a couple assists. She was the one in foul trouble, really, for the game. So, she didn't have any points in the first half. Second half, I think she only scored, 4 points in the third quarter?
Yeah, 4 points in the third quarter, 6 in the last quarter. And
then she made definitely 2 decisive threes in the fourth that, definitely helped out a lot. I think for the Liberty, closing games, Brondello, she put out a defensive lineup, which you got a 22-point lead. You're trying to hold it down defensively. I get it, but they're not great offensively. And so, unfortunately for them, Sophie Cunningham got free way too many times and made them pay. She is a 3-point threat. She has always been a 3-point threat. You cannot leave her alone. And unfortunately, she got open a few times and dealt those threes. So, for the Liberty, they came back. She had to put the starters back out, but they locked it down.
Yeah, they locked it down, and Johannès said post-game conference that, she was told by Sloot and one of the assistant coaches to be more aggressive and definitely show in that second half. She didn't want to do too much in the first half, but she was definitely aggressive in the second half. And when you look at the stats as well, what was very positive was the number of assists for the Liberty. They had 25 assists. Wow. And Breanna Stewart's on the Liberty's 25 assists on 30 made baskets said that they're getting to the point where they're making that extra pass, and that's what we all expect. Every game we have high assists, and they know that everyone can knock it down. And I think that was definitely one of the things that I enjoy in this game was the ball movement. Everybody was able and ready to score. And that's what you want when you have a couple of players missing or players that are not 100%. You want everybody to be involved and, be a threat to the other team. So, overall, great win.
I had a question, though.
Yeah.
About Johannès. I'm just thinking about this now. Do you think coming to the Liberty, because in France, she's the it girl. She's the point guard. She handles her team. But coming to the Liberty, I get the sense watching her on the court that she comes on there, she tries to help, she wants to help, she's in the game. If she's open, she's going to take the shot, But I get the sense sometimes that she just looks at herself almost like Stewie's number 1, Sabrina's number 2, if you will. Then, Vandersloot, like this is their team and I'm just here to help them out. And I think for her, it's owning her role on the Liberty. Like, you are a Liberty player. Like, this is your team as well. You have a huge stake in this team. So go off and do your thing, And sometimes I get the sense that she'll rather pass it than take the shot. And I think this game, I feel like the first half, she did a lot more passing. And she could have been more aggressive for sure. But I just wonder sometimes, does she feel like this is truly her team where she can take over a little bit?
I mean, it's a great question, Felicia. I mean, obviously for the people that don't really get to watch her games in Europe, so she plays for Asvel Lyon, and obviously she's like the star of the team with Gabby Williams. And it's true that her role, whether it's for Lyon or the national team with France, her role is completely different. She has the ball a lot. She scores a lot of points. Sometimes, she has her ups and downs, but she's definitely one of the leaders on those two teams. And so, obviously, European player coming to America, you have to adapt. And I don't know if, there's this sort of, apprehension of or this sort of respect towards like some of the stars of the team or the league. But I don't think people fully realize the potential of this athlete. She's amazing, and I think that's probably the reason why she wanted to come back to the Liberty, and obviously that caused her to not be on the national team for the Euro basket. But I think the presence of Sandy Brandello and the coaching staff, I feel like she feels in a safe place, in a place that is going to bring her to another level. And be able to sort of have this balance between distributing the game and sometimes just taking over. And I like the fact that Brandello gave her so much freedom to be herself, because sometimes in France, they try to restrain her to a specific role, and that could be frustrating for someone with so much talent. And so, yes, she might be sort of willing to accept more than what she would accept in France in terms of like having less minutes or being a certain role. But I do feel like that's going to help her to blossom, to have this experience in America and at such a high level that it's going to make her, and I already feel like it already made her a better player. So I think Vandersloot mentioned the language barrier, that she's very shy, and obviously with not being able to speak the language like fluently. I mean, she gets by in English, but I think that also probably has an impact. But I think she's gonna get more and more confident, and I have no doubt that she's gonna be key to this championship run.
Yeah, I mean, Sandy Brandello knows who she is. You can tell the way
and
she
the
looks at her,
relationship that she has with her
yeah.
when we see a post-game interview.
Yeah, the relationship they have, she's super proud of her. I think, she's going to get the help from the coaching staff, and, she probably has to, sharpen some of her passes sometimes. Sometimes they could look a bit wild.
You got to be ready.
But you got to be ready for them as well. But, she'll make those necessary adjustments. But I do feel like there's a little bit of apprehension on the court sometimes. I don't know. I get that sense, but it's still early in the season. As it wears on, I think she'll definitely, hopefully she'll take over a bit more.
Yeah, and even though I know that a lot of people came to see the return of Brittney Griner, we do want to see more fans keep coming to the games. It was the biggest attendance of the season, the second best attendance, I think, in the history of the Liberty since they've been at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. So we want to see more people coming. And those athletes deserve to have an audience because their talent is amazing. Marine is definitely worthy of being seen, but the whole team overall. And so next week, they have 2 games next week. Part 3 of the New York Liberty versus Atlanta Dream matchup back in Atlanta on Friday. Definitely looking forward to that one, to take our revenge on the game they took in New York. And then the second revenge game, I would say, on Sunday next week on June 25th against the Washington Mystics, who really shook us up in the first game of the season.
They're a tough team. But this time I think the Liberty would definitely be more ready against the Mystics. So I'm definitely looking forward to this game as well. And yeah, that sounds promising. And we'll be there to recap those 2 games next week. So thank you so much for listening to our podcast. And once again, let's go Liberty!